This happened. I'm sorry, guys. I really tried. Wait, it's working on. This happened. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. I really tried. Sorry, guys. I'm on mute because we're live. Sorry, guys. I'm on mute because we're live. Okay, let's just go for it. Sorry, guys. I'm on mute because we're live. I'm getting so much feedback. This is terrible. Okay, welcome to our public reading. And I don't know how to make this feedback stop. Okay, welcome to our, because this is delayed by a few seconds and this is terrible. But welcome, one watching now. Ooh, that's exciting. It might be me. So let's get started. This is Creative Writing 202. And now, ooh, that's exciting. It might be me. Wait, mute my video on YouTube? Like, can you hear me now on YouTube still? I am so sorry. You can't hear me on YouTube. Yes or no? Wait, mute my video on YouTube? Like, can you hear me now on YouTube still? I am so sorry. You can't hear me on YouTube. Yes or no? Mute my video on YouTube? Like, can you hear me now on YouTube still? All right, we're going to deal with the double feedback. I really don't know what to do about this situation. I'm really doing my best here. That's okay, though. So, welcome to Creative Writing 202, our public reading, and it's going to be interesting. And this has been a pleasure to teach this class, and there's double feedback, and I'm sure there's a way to stop it, but we're going to keep going. So up first, we have Umema Siddiqui. She's a freshman at Stony Brook who is currently majoring in biochemistry. Her poem, Evenings in Karachi, was inspired by her late grandfather's home in Pakistan, where she spent many summer days during her childhood.
The rain echoes through the streets, traffic noises creating a calming ambiance. My breathing slows, my eyes fluttering shut. The quiet hum of the outdated television lulls me to sleep, my head leaned against the sofa. The cup of chai in my hands tickles my nose and cheeks, bringing warmth to my face during the chilly weather. The aroma of the milky tea provokes memories of evenings spent in my grandfather's study. Walls covered with dusty books and diaries. He would spend hours writing about his day, license plate numbers, the names of the clerks at the grocery store, like he was trying to recall a fleeting dream. like he was trying to enjoy the little things before he was gone. It's been years since he's passed, but I can recall perfectly how he used to sit in front of his desk every night, the golden light from his lamp illuminating his face. His kind eyes had years of wisdom, crow's feet like the rings of an oak tree. As the rustling of the tropical trees swaying in the monsoon winds, I am brought back to the present. The television still running as my eyes refocus to the intense light. I am content. I am complete. I'd like to introduce Tasmia, who is a junior and will be reading one of her poems. The inspiration for her poetry stems from the works of Edgar Allan Poe in combination with her own interests.
One step forward, one arm outstretched, reaching toward serenity, letting go of all that is fruitless and worthless. The anxiety, the panic, the fear. Exhaust the fumes that drag under, relieve the pressure. Swing down, inhale, let the motion be consumed. Overtaking the body, surrender to the form and hold. 3, 2, 1, taut and then limp, lifeless like paper. Hold steady, Captain, the boat is underwater. Exhale, swing up, observe the level view, and let the sight fade away. Inhale, bend back and observe fleeting things all in a fleeting moment. Expel the thoughts weighing down like an anchor, steady the boat, Captain, and release the hold. Bend forward, exhale, and observe the blank sky. No cloud in sight, empty as if it were all erased. No chip, no dent, no sign of any crack, withstanding the burden of all the atmospheres above. 3, 2, 1. Welcome the darkness, the silence, with open arms and a heavy heart. Take heed, Captain, don't let the boat sink below. Inhale, exhale, 3, 2, 1. Holding on to what is, withdrawing from what was, one arm retracted, one step backward. Next, I'd like to introduce Carol Kim, who's a freshman at Stony Brook majoring in economics. Her nonfiction story is inspired by her close relationship with her mother.
My nonfiction is called Recurring Memory. A shake from my mom woke me up. It was 8 a.m. in the midweek of September, and I was still unfamiliar with my surroundings. There was endless chalk-colored space on my bedroom wall begging to be decorated. My family had moved to Levittown from Flushing during the summer after my audiologist advised us to move to a quieter place. It was such a drastic change, moving from a place constantly polluted by car exhaust to leaves fluttering on the sidewalks that I watched from the window of my room. I got out of bed and grabbed a battery for my cochlear implant. It was surreal back then what technology did for me. At the age of 2, I was deemed profoundly deaf. With the cochlear implant and some luck from a surgery, I could hear again on my right ear at the age of 5. Instead of using sign language, I communicated with my family in Korean, but I still have trouble picking up on words or maintaining conversations. After gobbling the remains of my Lucky Charm my mom served me, I got dressed for school. I wasn't looking forward to attending my second grade class. I knew from day one that I was an outsider. My peers already knew each other and had their own friend group. I was the only Asian in my class, and I felt alienated because of my Korean accent. Even so, my mom forced me to attend every day. The familiar yellow school bus approached my house. I grabbed my Dora the Explorer backpack resting on the stairs and left the house. My bus driver greeted me with a smile when I arrived at the entrance of the bus. I sat in the empty front seat. School was a blur, except for the dreadfulness of being alone. Having loads of time, I always did my work and handed every assignment in first. My teacher always told my speech therapist that I was a model student, but I was more concerned about my peers who looked at me as a geek. I have one memory etched in my brain that had confirmed my worst fear back then. It was the end of the day, and I was shuffling around at the entrance to the bus loop, waiting for my bus to arrive. A girl approached me, and I recognized her. We sat in the same lunch table, but I never caught her name. She introduced herself as May and started a conversation with teachers she had for the class. Then she asked a question, a simple question that anyone could have heard and answered back right away. but it wasn't the case for me. I had no clue what she was saying. You see, I recall so many small conversations, like being asked for my name, or how I was feeling, or any generic question, where I had to repetitively ask what, because I couldn't hear the question. It was really frustrating for me because people would start to say never mind every time I asked to repeat, knowing that I wouldn't ever comprehend. It felt like I was in a quicksand, and the more I asked, the more I sank into embarrassment. So at the time, I used my favorite word, what, and she repeated her question. I leaned forward, but I still couldn't decipher what she was saying. My cheeks seared red. As a last resort, I nodded, hoping that it was the right answer. But from the way she furrowed her eyebrows and tilted her head, I could tell she was confused. The bus came in, and I promptly excused myself, hoping she would think too much of it. The only thing on my mind on the ride home was that I wanted to get out of that place as fast as I could. The bus arrived at the front of my house, and as soon as the doors opened, I rushed down the steps to the front door that my mom unlocked every time I finished school. I opened the door to the smell of boiling chicken. My mom was in the kitchen, slicing carrots and green onions for chicken soup. Sensing my arrival, she welcomed me home, but I immediately ignored her and rushed upstairs to my room with the bedroom door banging behind me. I was too miserable to talk to anyone. I got in bed under the covers and tried to muffle my cries with a pillow. My mom heard me from the kitchen and headed upstairs. She stood by the door and watched me under the blanket. "Why are you upset?" she asked. Instead of replying, I tossed my body under the pillow. She prodded some more. "What happened during school today?" she asked instead of taking the hint. I caved. I blubbered to her that I didn't want to go to school anymore. I hated every second of loneliness and watching my peers laugh with their friends. Instead of sitting down on my bed to comfort me, she argued that it was necessary to attend school, but that wasn't why I was sad, and she knew it. As a kid, I felt like the world was against me with my misfortunes. All those embarrassing conversations and moments of ignoring people when I didn't hear them could have been solved if I was normal again. She asked again, "Honey, what's wrong?" And I retaliated, asking her why I was deaf in the first place. The question perplexed my mom. "Why do you think you were deaf?" she asked. I lifted my right hand and gestured my hand to my mouth, indicating that she drank alcohol while she was pregnant with me. I blamed my disability on her for not being responsible with me, and her eyes teared up. I have never seen her eyes spill like that before. I had no idea what came over me because I never saw her with alcohol, except a couple beers monthly. It wasn't even true at all. Then silence, the indicator that you crossed the line. I was unable to look at her in the eyes afterward because my vision was blurred with tears. Without a word, she headed back downstairs to finish preparing for dinner. I didn't know what to do except hide back under the covers and shut my eyes, hoping the nightmare was over. It was evening when I opened my eyes again. I had lost my appetite and couldn't bear to show my face outside my room. My mom was downstairs in the dining room having a glass of red wine. My dad had come home from work and saw my mom teary-eyed, sitting on the chair with a fixed eye on her glass. My brother was in his bedroom next to the dining room and overheard through the walls. Someone stomped on the stairs as I was thinking that I would get lectured by my dad. To my surprise, my brother swung the door open. "Apologize to her right now." I hated listening to him. He was always unnecessary with his requests that only benefited him, but that day I had to admit he was right. I got out of bed full of shame and trudged downstairs to the dining room. My dad sat next to my mom. Her face, although tear-stained, was expressionless. Her eyes were doleful. "I'm really sorry, Mom. I didn't mean it." My apology was meaningless. The damage was already done. I swore to myself that I would never let my anger hurt my mom like that again. Days passed and we didn't exchange many words. When we did, her replies were curt. My mom went to see my audiologist shortly for advice while I was in school. The same audiologist, Dr. Wetzler, had advised her to be patient with me as I was adjusting to my newly installed cochlear implant and I had to repeat second grade after moving schools. That was the day she started to talk to me normally again, as if the incident never happened. Up next is Matt Walsh, a freshman majoring in electrical engineering. His poem, The Death of an Elderly Plum, is inspired by the work of The Cure and Edgar Allan Poe.
I enter my kitchen with an overwhelming hunger, and my eyes feast on the first thing they see, a plum in the deepest of purple. It rolls off of the table and into the palm of my hand. Smooth to the touch, but lumpy in some spots. Creases and wrinkles show its age. At the slightest touch, the insides mush and move. After days, it has become old and soft. It is hard to find this plum scent. Only when I press my nose to it do I find it, the scent left by its wet paper towel coat. Once the skin tears off, the insides will smell aggressively sweet. One bite and the taste pours out with its juices. The insides are trying to break free from its skin. There lies a sugary bitterness, but my taste buds only seek its sweetness. In every bite, there is squishing and sloshing of dark red goop. The blood pitter-patters on the table. I try to muffle it, but the plum fights my attempts. After the top comes off, there is silence. Up next is Aisha, and she is a freshman studying political science. Her story is called A Glitch in the Road, based on her airport security experience upon her arrival from a religious pilgrimage.
I finished packing my suitcase and dragged it to the door of our hotel room. My family concluded our pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina after a week and a half. The sun had already set and the sky was filled with white speckles. We sat on the bus en route to the Medina airport. After a 43-minute flight to Riyadh, we boarded the connecting flight to New York. I sat on the aisle seat, my favorite. The flight was at maximum capacity, complete with crying babies. As I waited for takeoff, I thought to myself, why did they take Dad's passport at security earlier? They didn't take anyone else's. Could they have marked it or something? Brushing off the thought, I plugged in my headphones, blasted in a sheet, and drifted to sleep. The lights turned dull and aisle lights were activated. After 13 hours of reheated food, loud cries, a lot of coughing, and the shadows of people passing by, the plane finally landed in New York. I was one step closer to home. While waiting for the green light signaling us to exit, my family wanted to connect our passport to the mobile passport app beforehand. My older sister scanned mine first. When she got to my dad's, it didn't work. She tried again. Still didn't work. None of us could figure out why. My mom's eyebrows drew close together and her head tilted to the right. She told us to try it on our own phones. We tried and tried, but my dad's password would not scan into anyone's phone. When we got off the plane, we headed straight towards the kiosk machine to bypass the lines. The machine allowed people to scan in their passport just like the app did. It began printing one by one, slip after slip, for each member of the family. My dad's slip was last to come out. It looked like a yellow highlighter had marked an X on it. My dad showed the slip to one of the customs officers. He recognized the bright yellow marking and said, "Sir, please stand on the line over there." We stepped over as a family. I looked up. Oh, Coco Majid is here too. Oh my God, this must mean... I got scared at the mere possibility of my dad getting questioned in a scary room with bright lights and many officers. But after seeing my uncle in the same line, I figured it out. My uncle has gotten stopped and questioned every single time he returned from a trip. The long beard, Kofi, and Tho plants a red flag in the minds of the officers. As we entered the line, my uncle teased, "Oh, this is the special line." I was sweating, my head throbbed, my hands trembled. I looked at my mom. "Mom, does this mean?" "No, I don't know right now," she responded. My dad's face turned bright red. He stared straight ahead to the floor, then at my mom. The lines on his forehead grew deeper. I glanced with fright at my sister. She returned the same expression. Then it was our turn. Aisha. I raised my hand. She read through each name and smirked when my dad presented his passport and slipped. "Sir, you will need to be questioned in a separate room in a few moments. Please step to the side." My dad froze as his eyebrow grew wide. He became so nervous he started to sweat. My dad asked why he was going to be questioned. "We randomly select travelers for questioning," the officer responded. "It's the long hair stemming from the lower half of his face. It's the white dome of cloth that sits upon his head. We pose a threat. No crime, yet we pose a threat." Tears quickly filled my mom's eyes. She never liked dealing with officers, especially in this setting. She was scared for him. He was scared for himself. She waited by his side until it was time to go in. She tried to hide her fear from us, so she told us to undergo the security by ourselves and then wait by the gate. So we did. My mom paced back and forth with her hand in front of her, cupped together, asking God for ease and guidance when we left. My uncle waited with them. He noticed that my dad was sweating and said, "There's nothing to worry about. They stop me every time I fly back to America. It's a joke." He was mellow, laid back. Maybe it was just routine to question people and everything will be all right. It will be something that will go by quickly. God is on your side. He is always with you, my mom said. They called my uncle first. He went with a smile, knowing he had nothing to worry about. 5 officers followed him. They kept him for less than 20 minutes and let him go. On his way out, he shook the hands of the officer. He saw my dad and once again said, "Don't worry about it. Everything will be okay. It's going to be quick." He walked away. I saw my uncle come through the gate and thought, if he is done, then that means Mom and Dad will be done soon too, right? "Coco, are my parents coming out soon?" I asked, peering through the security to see my parents. "Inshallah," he responded with a smile as his hands rested steadily on the luggage cart. My parents waited together for an hour. They talked, they prayed, they paced. Then it was time to go into the room. My dad asked the officer if my mom could go in with him, but the officer denied the request. My dad's English was not always clear. She asked a different officer, "Can I go in the room while he's being questioned?" He also said no. "Bismillahirrahmanirrahim," my dad said. My dad went in to the room with 2 officers behind him. He remembered the room very vividly, a plain white room, a table, a few black chairs, 3 airport security workers. They had asked him multiple questions. It seemed as if they were assuming he was up to something. First, they told him it would only take a few moments. They lied. They kept my dad for 40 minutes to ask a few intrusive questions, 30 minutes long, and they kept my uncle in that same room. When he was finally let out, my mom saw the guards coming up to her. She was startled. "Is it over yet? Why are they following you?" "They need to check our luggage," my dad responded with exhaustion. My sisters and I waited by the gate for 2 hours that felt like 10 years. I paced across the shiny airport floor dozens of times. When I looked up, I finally saw my beautiful parents. But my smile fell as I saw 2 officers following behind them with the ugly smirks smeared across their faces. "They want to check the luggage now. Bring it to the side, please, so they can open it," my dad said to us. I wheeled the suitcase to the side and watched as the officers ripped open the bags like a new toy, expecting to find something suspicious. Off to the side, we had 4 boxes of Zamzam water from Mecca, wrapped up in orange cling wrap. The officers tore it away to inspect the water. "You know," they remarked, "we do have water in America." I fumed in silence while the sound of the officers laughing surrounded me. My dad murmured, "God will take care of him." As I swiped through our dirty laundry, I said, "Dad's right. They told us we could zip it up." I wheeled my suitcase back to the exit, free to go. The sun was not shining anymore, the sky grayed. The air thickened with moisture, and the cloud hovered over us. The rain from the morning and the exhaust from the vehicles passing by left a distinct smell in the air. My red hijab was falling off. I did not stop for any oncoming traffic. They stopped for me. Next up is Ramisha. She is a junior. And she wrote this piece about marriage and how a bride's mindset is on her wedding day, according to her.
Another hour, disaster strikes. The bright ruby dress clung to her body. The temperature rose with every passing minute, threatening to set her body aflame. The chair she was sat in felt as if it was made of thorns. Thorns and roses, she thought. To her left, her mother was crying, as if it was her duty to cry. She could see the hidden relief. She was happy. The prodigal daughter will leave at last. Looking at her mother, she knew there was no way out of hell. As if on cue, the devil arrived and stopped right in front of the dying fire. Its master had arrived. Next up is Samantha Flannery. Samantha Flannery is a freshman at Stony Brook University and is majoring in pre-nursing. Her fiction piece, The Comeback, is inspired by her experience growing up as a competitive dancer and having to deal with challenges throughout her training.
1. Walking down the hallway, Mia looked from side to side, waiting for someone to jump out in front of her. Ever since she found out she didn't have to use her crutches anymore, she had been trying to be more careful when walking. Mia, jumping in fright, she turned around to the sound. There at the end of the hall, pushing through the crowds, was Annalise. Mia had been friends with her for many years, but she still managed to be shocked by how loud the girl could be when she put her mind to it. "Where have you been?" Annalise shouted. "I've been looking everywhere for you. We have to go." "Am I in trouble? Did I forget to do something?" Mia asked. "No," Annalise said. "Our rehearsals got moved up, so we have to leave early." "Oh, shit. Why didn't they tell us earlier then?" Mia said, starting to dread what was to come. As much as she loved to dance, everything has been much harder since she got hurt 9 months ago. She never knew if things were going to go well at practice or not. "Well, we have to hurry if we want to make it on time," Annalise said. "I don't want to be late because of you." 2. Jump, turn, leap, repeat. Over and over again, yet the constant repetition never got old, until one day it all went wrong. Snap. The sound echoed throughout the room as everything stopped. Everyone turned to see what had happened as the coaches ran over to Mia, who was screaming in agony, clutching onto her knee. "Everyone out," Coach Jen yelled as people began to crowd around her. Gathering Mia into her arms, she struggled to calm the sobbing girl as someone called for help. 3. Sitting in the back seat of her mom's car, Mia was filled with anxiety throughout the trip to the studio. Thoughts of worry consumed her mind as they get closer. Despite being back for 3 months now, the shocking pain of hurting her knee still terrifies her. Her coaches continuously ask her if she's okay, but it doesn't seem to matter. They tell her, "It was an accident. There's no way it will happen again. You'll be fine." When they arrive at the studio, Annalise rushes in. Mia, on the other hand, hangs back. She can't help but envy her free-spirited friend. As she slowly approaches the door, she prepares for the onslaught of people. The touching hands, the sweat-scented air, the screaming of young kids. With her bag over her shoulder, she pushes her way down the hall, her short height making it harder to get through the people. "Mia," Annalise called, "what took you so long?" 4. The ride in the ambulance was one of the scariest moments of her life. Tears prickling at the corner of her eyes, she clutched onto her coach's hand with intensity. "Am I going to be able to dance again?" she asked. "Let's focus on trying to find out what's wrong with you first," her coach said. "Maybe you'll be back on your feet by the end of the week." But luck would not hold out. After getting an MRI, Mia found out she had torn her ACL and would need surgery. Her mother rushed into the emergency room filled with worry. Upon hearing the news, though, she froze, and as if the light had been switched, she became a different person. "Only you could manage this," she said in a harsh whisper as soon as her coach left the room. "What did you do this time?" "I didn't mean to," Mia cried. "It just happened. I fell out of a jump." 5. As Mia rushed to get ready for class, she almost forgot her tape. Since coming back, taping her knee has been a part of her routine. It helped to support her knee and relieve some of that lingering pain from landing on her jumps. When she entered the studio, she heard the dreaded words she could not stand. "Okay, everyone," Jen said. "You have 5 minutes to stretch, and then we're going to go straight to the routine." Mia quickly stopped herself from groaning, knowing it would not go over well if she was caught being disrespectful. These days were hardest for her because it meant that they would be doing the routine over and over again. The constant jumping and pounding on the floor was hard on her still recovering knee, and she knew she was gonna be sore by the time she got home, which would not go over well with her mother. 6. 6 months of rehab? Her mother yelled, her voice echoing throughout the living room. 6 months? How do you expect to dance? What was the point of me paying all this money? "I'm sorry," Mia cried. She should have known that her mother would not be supportive during her recovery. Her mother didn't even like the fact that she danced. She only allowed her to do it because it gave her something to brag about to her friends. "You better get better," her mother said in disgust. We put too much time and energy into this. I pay for you to dance, not sit on the sidelines. Ever since she started to take dance seriously, it seemed that her mother was trying to live through her. Her mother grew up dancing when she was a child, but had to stop when her parents could no longer afford it. It was always a dream of hers to go to competitions and win awards. Now that Mia was doing just that, her jealousy had soared and she had taken to living vicariously through her. I'm not quitting because of this, Mia said. I'm gonna get better. A little encouragement would help sometimes, you know. Mia picked up her crutches and made her way out of the room. 7. Step, step up, her coach yelled over the music. Straighten your knees and point those toes. I know you're tired, but we need to fix these mistakes if you guys want to have a chance of winning anything. Pain shot through her legs as she forced herself to continue the routine. She wanted to win. She had to win. Jump higher, her coach yelled. How do you expect to impress those judges if they're little kids with better leaps than you? As the music came to the end and they struck their final pose, the room was filled with the sound of panting breaths. Surprisingly, they heard a soft clapping. Shocked, Mia turned around thinking someone had entered the room, only to realize it was their coach. But that can't be right. Why are you all surprised? The coach said softly with a smile on her face. You guys did good. Smiles broke through their confusion as they realized that despite the correction she gave throughout the piece, they actually did well. You guys are done for today, Jen said. You guys can head out. They began to pile out of the room. When Mia was about to leave the room, she heard Jen yell, Mia, can you stay back for a minute? 8. Rehab was hard no matter how you looked at it. It took her 2 months just to be able to walk on her own. She couldn't wait to get rid of those crutches. She hated the way people looked at her in the hallway. They all knew what had happened. All people could talk about was her injury. The dancer who couldn't dance anymore. They may not have done it to her face, but she heard them nonetheless. All they could offer her was pity, nothing that could actually help her. The looks her mother gave her were even worse. Filled with disappointment, her mother's glances conveyed messages without words. With little support from her mother, it was a constant struggle to keep in a good mindset and not get stuck in the darkness. The feeling of hopelessness, that she would never get to do the things she loved again, sent her into a spiral sometimes, and she would get trapped in her mind. It was like a dark shadow hanging over that just wouldn't go away. Always there, poised to attack at a moment's notice. It clung to her like the air on a humid day. She had to believe she would dance again, though. It was the only thing that got her through the day. After 6 months, she was finally cleared. As excited as she was, she still held on to that lingering feeling of fear that she could get hurt again. After a few weeks of watching her, Jen pulled her aside. Are you ready to come back? Jen asked bluntly. Yeah, I am, Mia answered. Then why are you dancing like you're scared? Jen asked. Well, I don't want to get hurt again, Mia said. I just, want to take it easy and make sure I don't mess up. You're not going to mess up, Jen said calmly, placing her hands on her shoulders. You just got back. You need to build up your skills again, and with that, your confidence. 9. Relax, Mia, Jen said with a smile. You did nothing wrong. Really? Mia said, surprised. Then why'd you hold me back? I just want to let you know that I am proud of you, Jen said. You did well today. You are getting better. The piece looks great. Oh, thank you, Mia said. I'm glad to have you back, Jen said kindly. You mean a lot to the team and everyone here at the studio. Even the younger ones look up to you and know that your comeback is great. Thank you, Mia said, blushing. It means a lot to hear you say that. Now you better hurry along. I know your mom won't be happy if you keep her waiting, Jen said, pulling me into a hug. She's never happy about anything, Mia said with a grim look. Even if she won't admit it, your mom is proud of you, Jen said. You should see the look on her face when she sees you up on stage dancing. She loves to watch you. Really? Mia said. Yes, really, Jen said. Now let's get going. It's getting late. Okay, Mia said, entering the room. Bye, Jen. See you tomorrow. Bye, Mia, Jen responded, following her out. Get home safe. 10. That night on her way home in the car, Mia leaned her hand against the window, listening to her mother complain in the background. It had started to rain lately, and it was all her mother could talk about. Well, Mia thought, at least she's not complaining about me anymore. Up next, we have Jada Harris. Jada Harris is a sophomore currently majoring in business management. Her poem is inspired by a one-sided love and how it affects her.
So my poem is called A Love Never Meant to Be. Are you pretending to be lonely, how I did in the past, sitting in dark isolation when I could have went outside, waiting for people like you to come by and console me at night? We used to walk side by side, watching the sunrise, letting our toes sink into the piercing cold ocean. Before I knew it, I was infatuated with you. My days are more vibrant, like an innocent yellow and a passionate red. I would awake in the morning with a grin on my face. Things that upset me did not anymore. My mother's screams no longer scared me. My unpaid bills no longer stressed me. You became my world, like a fresh sensation of a first love, reaching deep into my heart. But then one day, you said you would get us coffees. Then you never returned. I was left standing outside in the snow, my heart frozen. I became silent. My world was silent. I wondered constantly what I could do to have this love mirrored back to me. But I realize now, when I saw you with another woman on your arm, a smile on your face that you never showed to me, a genuine laugh, my feelings for you will always be beyond reach. Next up is Andy Yu, who is a freshman pursuing in computer science. He'll be reading his poem, Cold Takeout, which was inspired by his yearning for home and family.
I walked into the room to see my mom, bustling around and moving the pans. Sweat drips from her forehead. She wipes swiftly before continuing on. Heat waves radiate from the stove. Steam from the cooked rice muffled my face. Gentle heat of the plates warm up my hands, welcomes me to begin the feast. I now sit away from the familiar place, eating stale and cold takeouts. The rice is dry, the meat is overly seasoned. I close my eyes to imagine my mother's fried rice. My tongue yearns for her love, wishing on a falling star, for the garlic taste of fried vegetable, for the buttery steamed fish that melts in my mouth, for the pork cooked in soy sauce salty and strong. Daydreaming about the smell of home, the aroma that will fill up the room. Only the richness of my mother's seafood, my stomach grumbles all day long. I no longer hear my mother's voice, asking about how my day went, or my niece laughed at the table. I forgot the sound of clacking chopsticks. Next up is Megan McLaren. She is a senior and is majoring in mechanical engineering. Her short story was inspired by her childhood nightmares.
I have always had an uneasy relationship with darkness. As a child, it meant departing from sunlight in a world that contained my friends, my parents, and my sister, leaving me stranded in the scariest depths of my imagination. Shadows would cling to the walls, skitter along the floor, loom on the ceiling above my bed. I would watch them, shielding myself with blankets so that only my eyes remained uncovered. If I rolled over to go to sleep, if I even blinked, they would creep closer. My escape would come with the golden bar breaking through the black curtain of my blinds. One nightmare haunted me every night. It would start with soft but firm, evenly spaced thuds coming from the basement near the base of the stairs, just south of my bedroom. I could hear them through the carpeted floor, thanks to the absence of the din of the living. They would make their way steadily up each step, growing in volume, until they could be heard in the kitchen at the far end of the house. I always thought that this would rouse my slumbering parents, but it never did. From the dining room, it would seem to take hours before the disembodied feet would finally reach the living room. If I sat up and peered through the crack of my door, I could see the creature down the hallway, but even then I knew there were some things that must remain unbeholden. The dream would always end with it looming at my bedside and me hiding under the covers with my eyes closed and my fingers in my ears, clairvoyantly aware that I'm about to be exposed to whatever horror has made its way into the safety of my chamber. Then I would wake, my ears numb from the cold night air. My mother would tell me that I was hearing my father as he was heading to bed each night, but this explanation seemed too apparent to me. The plane where my father existed was not the same as the one I visited in the late hours. The realm where the monster resides cannot coincide with the realm of the living. Recently, my mother recalled something the neighbors told her about several years ago, when I was about 4 years old. My neighbor happened to be standing at her back window, from which she could see into our backyard, when she spotted two hunched figures next to our house where my bedroom window would be. One of them was holding a flashlight and using it to see into my room. My mother later learned that they had been searching for two fugitives in the area that night. She thinks that this event might explain my nightmares. I don't remember that night. To me, it feels more like an innate quality within myself, that I can sense the monster that lurks outside my door every night. That I can feel his presence looming just over my shoulder as I slowly bleed these words out through my fingertips and onto the computer screen in front of me. I've heard it said once that the amount of stress experienced by the average high school student in the United States is equivalent to that of a psychiatric patient from the 1950s. This should have horrified me. The system set up by our society to prepare children for a life of toil was breaking us. But as someone who had spent many a long night staring desperately at a blank Word document, trying to will an essay into existence, and had on many occasions nearly made myself sick at the prospect of showing up to class without my math homework completed, this brought a small bit of relief. At least there was proof that I was justified in feeling so overwhelmed by the suffocating expectations of the American school system. In my sophomore year of high school, I enrolled in AP World History. History was my least favorite subject, but I didn't want to be left behind again by my friends who had all taken AP Biology the year before. On the first day of school, the teacher, who was also a varsity football coach, told us not to be afraid of him, that he was just a giant teddy bear. But as the year progressed, I realized that he was more like a hulking grizzly bear. His breath hissing through his sharp teeth as I scrambled to find my notes to prove that I had read all 5 chapters that he had asked for the day before, his sharp claws gleaming in the dingy classroom lighting as the entire room watches me shakily flip through my binder for the piece of paper that would save me from getting eaten. I giggled, reflexively filling the silence that compressed my chest like a vice. "Don't laugh," he said, already uncapping his red pen. My parents, seeing me struggle through this workload every night, decided to set up a meeting between him, my guidance counselor, and myself so we could discuss whether I should remain in the class. The counselor asked me if I was overwhelmed by the material. My world history teacher said that I would be bored in the Regents history course. He asked me to stay after class the next day. My stomach felt hollow. I hated having to be in that room any longer than I needed to. I stepped up to his desk. Its wooden surface only came up to about my waist, yet I could feel its shadow pinning me to the floor as I craned my neck to look up into the sinister face of my history teacher. The blinds were pulled, the only light coming from the open doorway at the opposite end of the room. He told me not to have my parents contact him. He then handed me my homework assignment from the night before. It had a red 0 in the top right corner. In researching to find the half-remembered fact about the amount of stress experienced by high school students, I discovered a paper written in 2000 by Jean M. Twenge from Case Western Reserve University in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology that summarizes 2 meta-analyses, which conclude that anxiety levels are increasing with each American generation. One theory she proposes as a possible explanation for this phenomena is, in her words, overall threat. She writes, anxiety was conceptualized as an organism's emotional response evoked when the organism is physically threatened, and that anxiety stems from a distorted perception of reality as dangerous. But what is the danger? What threat does my mind perceive as I work well into the late hours, wishing I could go to sleep? What is the monster that is making its way steadily through my house, towards where I sit cowering at my desk, typing with trembling fingers? As a child, I imagined him to be tall enough to breast the ceiling with his head, and large enough that his shoulders just barely squeezed through our narrow hallway. He was hunched, misshapen, and gaping mouth with long claw-like fingers and green boils covering every inch of his body. He was a creature that only existed in the darkness that fills each room as the sun leaves us behind. Maybe this darkness lives within me. Maybe I'm seeing the world through a black curtain that reveals the monster in the blank Word document on my computer screen at 2 a.m, in the encouraging words of my parents after I failed another class and disappointed them once again, in the face of my history teacher as he tells me that he won't help me work on my DBQ essay because it should be easy for me. Maybe the sun illuminates the horrors of the real world in which I exist as a detriment to my friends, my parents, and my sister. Maybe the realm where the monster resides can coincide with the realm of the living. Next is Sabine. She's a freshman at Stony Brook University, and she's studying health science. Today, she will be reading her poem titled Cafe au lait, inspired by her experiences being mixed race and coming to terms with her identity.
Cafe au lait. Cafe au lait colored skin, a peculiar blend of white and West Indian, the fusion I have yet to encounter from a person disparate. A revelation as a mere first grader, hearing "that's your dad" from my dumbfounded white peers, the perplexed faces seeing how the caramel-colored girl could be half white. The 3 words that forced me to question my race from my youth, an evocation of confusion about my ethnicity, only heightening with time. And still my brown peers failed to welcome me as their own too. You don't count, you're only half. You're so whitewashed. The words that diminish how I identify because I do not fit under one label. Or the "no, where are you really from?" that express how I can't just be a New Yorker. I must be foreign if I am any shade that isn't white. Will I ever be accepted as solely myself, or will I always be a pariah? I tell myself I should be proud. Aren't I supposed to be unique? You're such an interesting mix, they tell me, as if I'm something less than human, as if I am bred to their liking and I'm nothing other than a weird fetish, an oddity. Tell me, how can I be proud when I am simply an object, when I can with ease be compared to an animal so exotic and rare, like the zoo attraction that entices children and parents alike, those who glare at me as though I'm abnormal. Wherever I go, I'm judged by strangers who see the color of my skin as a threat to society. Why is it that I am double, triple checked at airport security and given endless scowls in my own city? Will I keep to my nut and pestering them? Does my olive complexion terrorize you so much, or is it my existence that offends you? I've often wished to have just been born white, how much simpler life would be, a life without the alienation I've ever endured. I'm too brown, I am too white. I wonder still, would I be accepted if I didn't have to check off a box? This next person is Rachel Ariel Sanchez. She is a first-year Stony Brook student and majors in linguistics. This piece she will be reading is titled Never What They Want. This poem was inspired by Gertrude Brown's Langston Blue poem and by recent Black Lives Matter protests. One message she wants to spread with her poem is that it shouldn't be a crime to be born in the skin color given to you.
Never what they want. Prideful and happy they tell us to be. Love yourself just the way you are, but how you are is not what they want. The color of your skin dictating your every move in the eyes of the law. Who gave them the control? Control we lost before we could grasp it. Chained and shackled within the land of the free, tear-stained memories of those lives lost to the system built to defeat us. They know we can never be free. Since the 13th Amendment, they knew we couldn't make it out, where the daily quota, 659 arrests made every hour more arrests than hours in the day. Time ticks, time constructed to trap us behind bars between heaven and hell, good or evil, yet the whitewashed media doesn't give us the option. Running out of places to escape to, the blacker the skin, the bigger the target. No matter where we go, we're followed by the fear of people who are supposed to protect us. They prey on our lack of, the education they never provided us. We're punished because of the way we look. Fair skin doesn't equate fairness. There's never been fairness. Black has never been good. Black has never been beautiful. Black has been the target. We can never make it out. Laws written by people who don't look like us, who've never known our struggles. We must be prideful and happy towards ourselves. We must love ourselves the way we are, but who we are, it's not what they want. And next up is Danielle, who's a sophomore majoring in health science. She will be reading I Speak ASL, and this piece was based on her personal life experiences.
None of our family, me, my mom, my brother, and my grandma, expected how my deafness would affect our ways of communication. In our household, 3 languages were spoken and signed: English, Spanish, and American Sign Language, or ASL for short. At the time, as a preschool toddler, I was fluent in English. I mostly signed. My grandma only knew Spanish, and my mother knew both English and Spanish. And for my brother, a gordito, and bounced all 3 languages around. I was diagnosed with DEM moderate hearing loss at 2 years old, which happened right after the birth of my brother. My brother will always have to take me to New York City a couple times a month for a usual hearing test that consists of hearing soft beeps, the alarming beeps, and repeated the words. Ah, ba, ba, ba. My audiologist would say, censor her mouth with a black circle pad, testing me if I could pick up the sound without lip reading. Ba, 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 I replied as I sat in a rather large comfy chair. The office looked kid-friendly with the all interactive toys that you can play with, but something just caught my attention: the magnet monkeys. I stared at those 3 hanging freely from her work area. All wore different colors: red, green, and yellow. All were different sizes, but all 3 had in common: they were smiling and wore cochlear implants, which I had on my right ear, and I had a hearing aid on my left. At 5 years old, I was already experiencing severe hearing loss. Shh, shh, shh. I still stare at the monkeys. Shh, shh, shh. No response. Danielle, the audiologist waved, catching my attention. After graduating from new school for the deaf in 2 years, I was placed in kindergarten due to disparity between hearing and deaf education at the mainstream school. I found myself struggling to make friends. I couldn't sign with anyone. I couldn't keep out the conversation, and I couldn't be with 3 deaf monkeys who were tangling around each other in the office. Luckily, I found my so-called monkey best friend, Diana, whom I still make friends to this day, but she was hard of hearing, or HOH, and didn't know much about ASL. Like me, she did not master English nor Spanish, as she came from a Mexican family. Yet, she still played around. We were placed together in the same class every year up until 8th grade. We were inseparable to the point that people mixed up our names all the time. Together, we were Danielle Martinez. Funnily enough, there was Danielle Martinez in our school, and the staff always called her down to the nurse or the office for a monthly hearing check before they realized that I was Danielle Ramirez and my best friend was Diana Martinez. Years later, I reconnected to my retired nurse from elementary school. Upon greeting, she tilted her head in surprise. You're not Danielle Martinez, are you? We combined ourselves in a small resource room for 2 to 3 hours a day with a teacher of a deaf and an HOH. On top of that, we attended speech therapy twice a week for an hour or so. Without them, we would have survived English intensive school. We could have developed the ability to speak Spanish with the elementary school program, be taught entirely Spanish, but they prevented us from joining due to not wanting to linguistically overload us. Instead, we have to wait until middle school and high school to learn Spanish to find the client with our Latino families. There wasn't anything wrong with getting extra help through elementary school, and I was thankful for that. But I grew ashamed of how I still sign in a hearing school. Every time I see people raising or moving their hands, making gestures as they talk, I mistake them for signs and assume that they know ASL like I did. Slowly, I chained my arm to the ground every time I spoke and pretended that I knew no such thing about ASL. I even called myself HOH like Diana because I still wore hearing aid and I withdrew myself drawing cochlear implants. Kids would laugh and cup their hands into each other's ears and whisper something to them. They tried to do it with me, but my hearing aid had warded them up with a warning wobble for putting their hand too close to my hearing aid. The cochlear implant wouldn't even work either. Instead of an annoying sound, it was just hushy, muffly, and eventually I felt speckles of spit in my right ear. Never mind, I'll tell you later. The native never arrived. Then it just hit me. I just didn't speak English right. Maybe if I worked hard, I perfected every sound, all 44 sounds in the language. Listening and orally, I passed up as being normal. I would have to make more friends beside Diana. From there, I devoted my time to learning English every single day. While I was able to absorb the learning like a sponge, Diana learned slowly. And to my mom, I loved being normal. Deep down, I was pathetic of being normal. Just after I mastered English after finding place in AP English in 11th grade and completing my speech therapy, that one incident was just a slap in the face I didn't even realize until days later due to my apathy. I walked into my health class, hold down my work from honors business lab. It was the last period of the day. Just as I walked in, another student named Kevin came up to me. "Can you say rabbit?" he asked, smirking. "What?" "Rabbit. Say it." "Rabbit?" Kevin burst into laughter and walked away to another victim who soon would say rabbit. That was weird, I thought. Then I shut up and went to my desk to start the work for today's do not question. I was already normal. You couldn't pronounce your R's like as well as you're supposed to, I guess. You know, my brother sighed and smacked his lips. I was supposed to be really mad because, first of all, you'd be a dickhead, go bully someone else, especially something that shouldn't bear any weight. Like, it's not that. He paused. I hate bullying or other things like speech impediment. As my brother would say, on how I shouldn't be bullied for how I taught. I beg to differ. Remember how we had 3 languages circled around in our household? At that time, it was Spanish that dominated the household as my mom, my brother, and my grandma all spoke that language. Due to my deafness, my mother spoke English to me to train me with lip reading. Despite that, my mom claimed that she did not want to divorce me from sign language. Soon, English took the throne in our household. Because my elementary school didn't let me join the Spanish program, I didn't flourish my Spanish skill. Instead, I learned bits and pieces from Univision, Telemundo, or my grandma. Embarrassing enough, I didn't know any curse word in English, but I knew in Spanish. Every time my grandma bumped to the chair or stubbed her toe, she said, "Go on, yo." However, my grandma and I would have to vocalize to each other action, or either my mom or my brother would have to translate for us. Sometimes I mishear the Spanish word and repeat them all wrong until years later. "Dinah, look, I know how to say B word in Spanish." I chimed in company during recess 4th grade. I was huddled together for the line of the swing. No, I don't know. What's it? It's plato. Plato. I thought that meant plate. I grew tired of my mom and brother chanting for our conversation. I finally took matters in my own hands. I enrolled in Spanish class in 6th grade. Every year since then, I learned and learned. Now that I could speak, I could read and write. Right before I was enrolled in 11th grade in Spanish honors, I traveled to Dominican Republic, where most extended family lived. I thought I could finally put my year's worth of Spanish to use in conversation. When I got there, I realized my vocabulary would have helped me much. Many friends and family came over to see us, me and my brother, especially how it has been 8 years. They talked about us while we sat in our living room, playing with ourselves. "¿Cómo les Danielita?" Our family friend would ask, "¿Ella puede hablar español o no?" No. My grandma replied, "Danita no habla español, pero ella sabe poquito." "No les entiende?" "No." Just like that, they moved to another conversation. One time, though, my grandma was chatting with our family friends, Pamela and her mom. We sat on a plastic chair in a circle during a hot, blazing night. Flies flittered, beers clinked, domino crashed, all happened in the background noise. They talked about how Pamela at Enema University was working on a film project. They talked about how big I am now at 15, ever coming La Reina, as puberty blessed me with beautiful curvy hips and long, majestic dark hair. You talk about La Loderia too. The conversation lasted about 2 to 3 hours. As soon as we got home, my grandma was fuming. Her face scrunched and spewed hot acid, how I was incompetent and didn't join the conversation, and I kept smiling at everyone. My brother tried to reassure me by patting my back gently. "It's okay," he hushed, as an ugly snake were made in between his words. "It's okay. Mine was the best for you. She goes speak one language and sure to be bilingual. Don't take it seriously, okay?" And so I floundered my Spanish speaking skill afterwards, so I found other ways to prove that I'm still Latina. I buried my nose in my 90-page research paper on how America's superheroes have killed Latin America. I tutored a young Latino family every day after school, watched a lot of Latino and Spanish cinema. I even earned a certificate and still got my high school diploma, stated I'm master Spanish. Although I did all of that, it still felt like I ever changed my goals in the best of Latino household. Alternatively, I picked up Japanese again with my passion for anime and art. I was able to go abroad to Japan for a month. Despite that, my family wanted me to go to Spain. I ended up in a non-busy near street of Tokyo to cold Chicago like Sapporo and the human tradition in Kyoto. Everyone tried teaching me Japanese orally. Every single time, I badly misheard them and often got the most basic introduction wrong. Even got made fun of it. Yoroshiku ogenashimasu. Yoroshiku onegashimasu. Nonetheless, I enjoy learning Japanese, and for once, I was highly expected to do well. Unlike English or Spanish, ASL was used learning to communicate among peers with ease, was nothing but another expectation. There's even disdain for deaf people who familiarize themselves with hearing people in the deaf community. Deaf View and Netflix show shed a light on how there's elitism in the deaf community. Cheyenne Clairbourg, a Deaf University student, shared about how she is not deaf enough. Essentially, the deaf elite individual not only willing to alienate, HUH, and hearing people, they would even ignore deaf who don't sign as much or not at all. There is no constantly trying my hardest to be molded into society's definition of normal. Only I can define it. That's why I be fighting to reclaim my unique multicultural identity, now that was lost due to years of racism, linguism, ableism, and autism. I began watching ASL TikTok videos during the quarantine. A TikTok video that stood out to me was that of a young woman who's an ASL interpreter teaching her infant daughter how to define a ball with a specific color. Yellow, where she signed, the daughter crawled over the box, pulled out the yellow ball, which the video ended with clapping and cheering. Yellow is a sign of hopefulness, and I hope to see barriers be broken down between the hearing and the deaf and HUS people, and maybe the daughter could be the one who unites them. And now next up is Leslie Cruz, is a freshman studying but is currently majoring in political science. Her poem titled Shame was inspired by her personal experience with her father and the emotions that came with them.
I felt his gaze, but I couldn't bear to look back at him with those atrociously painful eyes so filled with disgust. Where was his little girl, the little girl that he loved so much, who would hug him, welcoming him home from his precinct, who would cling to him with her tiny arms tightly wrapped around his muscular athletic legs, who would kiss him goodnight before she went to bed. His little girl would never have done such promiscuous acts. I'm too scared to speak. My throat tingles as though I have to sneeze. I know I must be as red as my teary eyes. I can barely see, everything blurry, but that doesn't bother me. I just wish he couldn't see me too. My chest felt like it was being stabbed by my grandmother's needles. I felt like someone was pinching my nose, allowing me to only take shallow breaths through my mouth, yet it still remained closed. I can't revert back to the moment when he discovered those messages and pictures and finally realized I was not his little girl anymore. That vibrant girl full of laughter, who didn't even know what seduction meant. Everything good in the world with her innocence still intact like the day she was born. His little girl he called his crown jewel, his precious angel, his own personal treasure, which he saw as so valuable it should be kept a secret and locked away, until a little boy came along and found it, and seeing how shiny and pretty it looked, the little boy took it for himself. Now, no matter how hard the man tries, he knows he can never get his little girl back, because that glorious cherry was picked, and you can't stick the stem back on the branch. But I am the one who helped ruin her. I am the one who helped destroy the light in her. Because I am the one who told that little boy, giving him a map and all, where exactly he can find the man's treasure. And now here I am, having to face him alone, for the little boy ran and disappeared with his gem. The little girl left nowhere to be seen. All that is left is me. And up next is Tiffany Adams, a junior majoring in chemistry at Stony Brook University. Her poem is titled Head Pains and was inspired by her life experiences dealing with chronic migraines.
The veil hanging over society's eyes suffocates, causes a dissociation that transcends generations. If I were already corrupt within my own mind, the new ringing would make me crack. I can't take the constant thumping on the back of my neck. Sunlight burns inside my mind, chirping turns to explosion. They call me crazy. Say their worries are the same as mine. I can't even remember my own names. What is the point of mirrors? They might as well be Vanta Black. I can't see myself anymore. Trapped. And each time I touch the mirror, hoping she will touch me back. Next up is Benita. She is a sophomore. The inspiration for her nonfiction piece mainly came from a realization of her current happiness and relative high in her mental health, and wanting to document and highlight a string of some of the spontaneous tiny moments that made these past few months really special.
Hi, this piece is called Sunshine. As it turns out, I have a tendency to get into people's cars when I don't really know them all that well. Today's subject in question is Katie, a mysterious ball of energy with an undoubtedly big heart, but someone I had just started talking to a few days prior. Nonetheless, her relative spunk and quick humor are enough, along with the fact that Nora and Miguel are also with us, for me to agree to a quick ride to Ralph's. They weren't kidding when they said Mini. I stand next to Nora, tilting my head at the Mini Cooper convertible as we wait for Katie to rearrange the back seat for us. Are you sure the four of us are going to fit in there? Nora looks unconvinced. Relax, you'll fit. Benita counts as like half a person. Miguel opens the passenger door and tilts the front seat forward, beckoning me to enter. I roll my eyes at his jab and gingerly step into the car. It isn't until the roof is pulled back that I actually look around. It's cramped, sure, but if I tilt slightly and look up at the sky, I can feel the sun on my face, warm and comforting. I feel myself unravel from my hunched, cramped position and stretch upward, grateful for the newfound space. We aren't moving very fast, but the wind pushes as we surge forward, pulling at my hair, leaving it a mess over my eyes, tugging at my cheeks, leaving me unable to hide my smile. This is my first time in a convertible, not that they're a rarity, but there is a thrill about riding with the top down, knowing everyone can see you, knowing the sun is lighting up my face, knowing if I reach out I can touch the car next to me, feel its cool exterior against my fingertips, knowing time stops when there is nowhere you have to be except right here, moving forward yet not moving at all. I look around, at Nora right next to me, laughing as she deals with her own hair catastrophes, at Miguel, humming along to the music blasting, fixing his beanie, turning around and winking when he sees me watching his reflection, at Katie, yelling at Miguel for changing the music too often, driving us forward, forward, forward. But I can't seem to remember there being a destination. If there is, I don't need to know it, and I don't want to. 2. Gloves? Ivan looks surprised as I carry them into the kitchen. Can't punch without them. I'm sure I can, but I've missed the feeling of the glove sliding over my small hand and closing it, pulling the wrist strap taut around my bones, securing it in place. With them on, I feel invincible, bigger, and scarier. You can't be scared and scary at the same time. I choose this. The first punch barely grazes Ivan's bicep, and we laugh at my horrible aim. Don't be afraid to go for it, he says, raising his eyebrows. I can take it. I look up at him. I'm more worried about hurting myself than hurting him, but he doesn't need to know that. Follow through. He positions my arm at a safe distance. Bend your back knee, and as you punch, twist forward and shift your weight onto your front leg. And don't just punch me here, he points to his arm. Punch me through. Feel the punch all the way through. Easier said than done. I punch once, twice, 3 more times, each time grimacing at the lack of strength or accuracy or both. Ivan laughs each time, shaking his head. Aren't you angry? I look at him again, then back down at the target. I'm not angry, and this thought doesn't appear as a revelation or an epiphany of any sort. It's a passing thought, one that wouldn't catch me by surprise until later. I've always let my anger fuel my punches, discouragement fire up from inside and ignite the blow. But now, the anger that I had once tapped into is emptied, and I can't muster up enough to follow through. I should be proud. I feel happy, truly happy for the first time in too much time, and it bubbles up with every morning sun I wake up to. The anger weighing me down for months has left, leaving in its place a newfound lightness. No, I'd find no real anger here. But power, that I've been working on, counting my blessings before and after I count my wishes, looking in the mirror and forcing eye contact with the person I see, the person strong enough to handle her past and carry it with pride, learning to understand why other people believe in me. I believe in me. This time, the punch goes through, and I don't stop when I feel the contact with his body. I keep pushing, straightening my elbow and letting the power out with my entire being, becoming strangers with the fear that lives in my brain. He doesn't expect it. He stumbles backwards, eyes widening as he smiles with approval. That was actually a pretty good one. I laugh, watching him rub his arm where I hit it, and I bounce on my toes. Let's go again. 3. It's something about the sun. That's what I've always told myself, that the sun changes me, that I'm happier when it's bright out. And I thought it with all my heart until this moment, when I'm squinting through my fingers at the sun coming in through the windshield, and I'm interrupted by Tyler, grabbing my arm excitedly. I turn, annoyed, and he looks at me, laughing as he screams the lyrics in my ear. I flinch away, looking at him with what I hope is well-feigned disgust. He lets go of my arm and the steering wheel, much to my despair, and begins strumming an imaginary guitar, head bopping to the beat, singing wildly out of tune. He must sense me rolling my eyes, because he turns to look at me again, singing louder and louder until I finally crack, the laughter escaping me like bubbles as I join his performance, adding in harmonies when I can finally figure them out. I don't really know the words. I don't need to. I don't usually sing in front of people. We turn onto a wider road, putting on a show for the audience of tall trees glistening in the bright sunlight. I look up through the glass sunroof and watch as the branches of leaves speed by, laughing at the dizziness that's distracting me from the lyrics. I'm happy here. I watch him dance, watch him drum, watch him watching anything but the road. I should be more scared, really, all things considered, but my head has never really felt this free of fear. This filled with light, light from him, light brighter than the sun filtering in through the leaves. 4. If a stranger were to walk into Stony Brook University, Hand College, room 120 on your average Sunday night, this is what they would encounter. A dark kitchen, save for the luminescence radiating from the small MacBook screen on the dining room table. 3 tubs of ice cream, the different flavored jars moving around the table as the hands intermittently exchange them, new spoons digging in after each swap. 3 girls hunching over in their seats, arms pumping in unison to the simplistic pulses of the Stranger Things theme song, casting 3 dancing shadows on the curtains behind them, silent. Me looking at the door, making eye contact with this imaginary stranger, smiling. I know they are waiting for something extraordinary to happen. What they don't know is that the extraordinary thing is right here, in this moment, us, tongues cold from the sweet vanilla, hearts warm despite the chilly evening. We sit, Sophia wrapping her robe around tighter, Nora stretching her legs out onto the other chair, and me, in a rare moment of perfect bliss. 5. Okay, let me talk, okay? Let me explain it to you because I know you and I'm a doctor and I know. I laugh painfully and look up at Tyler, who is watching me expectantly. Okay, I shrug, explain it to me then. He leans in, counting off on his fingers as he talks. Okay, so let me explain what you think, okay? You think you're ugly. Yeah, you think you're the ugliest person in the world. I know you do. Well, let me tell you something, okay? You're not ugly. You're not ugly. I'm gonna keep it straight with you because you know I don't lie. You're not ugly. You're not hot either, okay? I won't lie to you, but you're mad cute. You're so cute, okay? You're not ugly, so stop thinking that. You're not. And you think you're so dumb. You're not, okay? You're one of the smartest girls I know. I interrupt him here. I don't know. You know a lot of dumb girls. He laughs. Okay, yes, but you're the smartest girl I know. And you're one of the coolest people in the world, okay? Why else do I ask you to hang out with me every single day? I look up at the sunlight streaming in from the glass library ceiling, squinting my eyes. Avoiding his gaze, I mumble a half-hearted response. Maybe you're desperate. He looks back in disbelief, shaking his head. We sit in silence for a moment before he stands. Get up. I look up at him, startled. What, now? Yes, now, get up, we're going outside. Too confused to argue, I grab my jacket and follow him out the side door, walking behind him until he stops at the top of the giant grassy steps outside the building, He faces me. Open your arms. Oh, a hug, knowing I need hugs. I widen my arms, smiling, waiting. In the millisecond when you realize your feet aren't connected to the floor anymore, you have two options. You can either go with it or you can fight it until you're planted firmly again. But I'm too distracted to think through these options as his arms wrap around me and lift me up as he straightens, all 6'3" of him. What are you doing? In amused fear, I wrap my arms around his neck and gasp without meaning to. Look at me, he says, and don't cry. I might cry, I think, as I turn, my face in front of his. With our masks on, I look at the only thing I can see, his brown eyes, urgent yet soft. You're worth so much more than him, okay? I can only blink in response. You aren't the kind of girl who gives people second chances. You're the kind of girl who gives people one chance, and if they lose their chance, then too bad for them, okay? It kills me to watch you get hurt like this. You deserve better. So stop thinking about him, okay? I blink back tears, but they are not from sadness. Okay, I lie solemnly. He knows I'm lying too, but he doesn't push it today. Unwrap your arms, he says. I do so, ready for him to place me down on the ground again. When he tightens his grip, I look at him, frowning in confusion. Suddenly, the world spins, or maybe we do. Circles and circles until I finally give in and start laughing, feeling his arms move around me carefully as we twirl, my head resting on his, half scared he'll drop me from laughing. The difference between a boy and a man is that a man is strong enough to lift you up, physically to lift you up off your feet, emotionally to lift you up from a dark place, spin you around until the sky blurs and you're laughing away any thought of tears. Tyler sets me down softly and looks at me. We're still laughing, looking at each other. For a second, I wonder what someone would think, watching the two of us make fools of ourselves as if we were drunk. 5 p.m. on a college campus outside the library. But the feeling fades, as does my earlier sadness. Right now, there is only us, only here, only this feeling of spinning into laughter. 6. It's silent for a long time after I put my phone down. Sophia and Nora watch me warily, and I can tell they are bracing themselves for my tears, for a breakdown, for a realization that blocking a boy out of my life is the hardest thing I've had to do. But I had to do it. Tears don't come. I rest my chin on the dining table and look up at them, sighing. It feels weird, I offer. It's too soon for tears, and they know this. What do you have going on for the rest of the night? Sophia asks. I look at the clock. Working, I guess. Hall council at 9:30. She nods. We all sit in silence for a few minutes, and then she stands suddenly, pulling her hair into a ponytail. Okay, she says, put your shoes on, we're going out. Nora and I sit up and look at each other surprised. Huh? I said we're going out, let's go. Sophia walks into her room, leaving us in the kitchen, still in shock. We finally jolt ourselves out of the shock and let the giddiness move our feet into shoes and out the door into Sophia's car. We climb in and I look expectantly at Sophia, who plugs in her phone and locks the doors. Where are we going? I laugh, knowing her well enough to know she won't tell me. Just somewhere, she smiles, handing me her phone. Here, you can choose music. Play as much Ariana Grande as you want. I take the phone, looking at her. While tears may not have appeared earlier, they were surely threatening to make a grand entrance now. I blink them back with a smile as the music enters the car, and I look out at the dark night sky speeding past us as we drive to this unknown destiny. We pull into a parking lot, and I look out the window, dumbfounded. We're going to Stop and Shop? No, silly. Sophia rolls her eyes as Nora laughs. She points out the side window. I follow her gaze and meet the bright lights of the small Carvel sign flashing back. Sophia, you didn't. I climb out of the car, working overtime to hold back the tears. I did. She throws her hands up and laughs. Buy whatever you want, okay? You deserve a treat. Minutes later, with the ice cream in our hands, we climb back into the car, laughing over each other, the vanilla dripping down over the sides and leaving the sticky sweetness on our fingers. I look up at the sky again, letting our laughter drown out the music, letting the sweet ice cream drown out my salty tears, letting this feeling drown out any others. Here in this car, the farthest from anything resembling a house, is where I feel most at home, with the people that are home to me. 7. When Tyler had first started teaching me Farsi, it was so that one day we would be able to talk shit about people as they walked by us without them knowing. This was fun, learning girl, boy, why are they looking, stumbling on the accent. But it's become less for me about knowing it for the future and more about learning it now, sitting in my dorm room, cross-legged on my purple comforter, him on the chair inches from my bed, sunlight streaming in between the thick, scratchy curtains. Learning words I want to know for my sake, not his, not theirs. Say it again, he urges gently, always gentle. He repeats himself slowly, carefully, making sure I hear every syllable. He waits patiently as I sift through the sounds in my brain, hoping it will make sense when they leave my mouth. Hush, I say slowly, questioning the way it sounds. He smiles, and I know I've finally gotten it, or the closest I've been yet. Good job. I'm proud of you, really. I feel my face warm, a mix of excitement and shyness, as I look down at the deep purple I'm sitting on, pulling on a loose thread. I smile, looking up at him, thanking him softly with my eyes. He meets my gaze. Are you? Khush? I nod simply. I am. Happy.
Oh my goodness. That was absolutely incredible. And before I give my overly emotional closing speech, which we know will be happening, obviously, our lovely Vanita, who also is going to be in a 202 anthology for some of her work this semester, is just going to read a little thing that some students have worked on, compiled about the class, especially with the interesting times we took it in. So take it away.
We didn't think we would make it here. We didn't think we would make it through 15 weeks of the fall 2020 semester with only a few minor scrapes and bruises, a few hiccups in scheduling, a few bizarre changes to the syllabus. We didn't think we would make it through a whole semester of what for many of us was our only in-person class. But we did. We did, and though we were separated by 6-foot blockades or by the virtual reality of our Google Meet video cameras, we also came together as a class, a funny, supportive, crazy, and sometimes a little tired class to do this. And what exactly was it that we did? Well, I'm sure we read. We read about the color blue. We read about people who were looking for love. We read about blackbirds. We hated reading about blackbirds. We read pieces that were 2 paragraphs long and pieces that were 20 pages long. We read poetry, music without the notes, fiction, our escapes from reality, nonfiction, some harsh truths hidden in a spool of craft and style. We read even when we were falling asleep from exhaustion from all the other work that had to be done. And I'm certain we wrote. Oh, we wrote and wrote and wrote. Wrote about ourselves, wrote about people we fantasized of, wrote about fruit. We wrote until we hated what we were writing, then wrote some more until we learned to love it. Oh, and speaking of learning, we did learn. We learned vocabulary, sure, and grammar for fun, but we mostly learned about each other's fears and weaknesses, about what made each other happy, about Ramisha's love for books, about Samantha's love of dancing, about Jen's 3 jobs and their cat too. Looking back, there were many, many cats. And most of all, we laughed. We laughed with Jen, who started classes with howdies and ended email signatures asking us to send messenger owls. We laughed with each other, laughing at our pain, laughing at our confusion, laughing at everything we had gone through since we had last seen each other. Sometimes we laughed just because we were tired. And there you have it, 15 weeks of reading, writing, learning, laughing, appreciating every moment that we had with this small connection to society, especially at a time when everyone seemed so far away. 15 weeks of learning everything we could about writing from Jen, and maybe 15 weeks of teaching Jen about teaching us. 15 weeks of creating this writing community, or dare I say, family. 202, we did it.
Okay. I couldn't hold back, and I told myself I wasn't going to cry, so technically I'm not crying because this isn't happening. My goal when I created the syllabus for this class, and the theme of it is identity and community, because community building is important to me, and it's important to everyone, especially in nutso times like this. And I could not have asked for a better first class. All of you are so incredible, and I'm honored to have taught you and seen you grow as writers, seen all the work you've produced. And obviously keep in touch. I'm so proud of everyone for everything they've read and everything that they've done. And yes, I'm clearly an overly emotional person, but sharing this experience with you guys is something I will never, ever forget. And I am just so proud of all of you. So thank you. And I'm going to end the live stream if everyone could just stay on for a little bit, and we can chat a bit. But everyone clap and say goodbye for the live stream, because the wise words of Vanita and Elle Woods, we did it!